Some of the most popular advice in the personal development world is actually right, but almost everybody is doing it wrong. And when you do it wrong, it just doesn't work. We are talking affirmations, we're talking gratitude journals, we're talking breathwork and calming practices. You've heard about all of them, I'm sure. Maybe you even tried them. And maybe if you were honest with yourself, they never really felt right. Maybe they felt fake or insincere. Maybe you tried them for a couple of weeks and then just gave up because you weren't seeing any results. Now, the habits themselves were never the problem. All three can be incredibly powerful tools for changing your relationship with money and helping your brain create new financial patterns. They truly can change the trajectory of your financial life. The problem is that most people were never taught how to use them in a way that works with the brain instead of against it. And once you understand how your brain actually processes change, helps you with motivation, and helps you build new habits, everything starts to make a lot more sense. And you see results. So today we're going to talk about 3 daily routines, one in the morning, one throughout the day, and one at night. They are going to make you happier, healthier, and if you use them the way that we're going to talk about today, they will absolutely help you build financial freedom. Because financial freedom doesn't start with a spreadsheet, an investment, or a budget. It starts here. In the mind. I'm Tammy Kayata. I'm a certified financial planner professional. I spent 15 years helping over 6,000 people completely transform their financial lives at a Fortune 100 company. And I saw up close every version of this story. I know what works. I know what the industry will not tell you. And now that I'm out on my own, I am finally free to share all of it with you. No jargon, no watered down advice, no false promises, and no sponsor telling me what I can and cannot say. This is off the record, where ordinary people build extraordinary wealth. Now, if you're new here, welcome. You picked a great episode to start with. If you've been riding with me for a while now, you know that we do not surface level here. We go deep. We look at the research and we bring you things that you can actually use. All right, let's talk about 3 routines, morning, midday, night. And we're going to anchor every single one of them in what's happening in your brain. Because again, once you understand why something works and how to do it the right way, you actually do it because you actually start seeing results. And the results are real. They are genuinely able to change the direction of your life. People who successfully build these habits often improve not only their finances, but their overall sense of well-being. They feel more in control. They feel more confident, less stressed, and more satisfied with the life that they're creating. So let's start with the morning. And let's start by addressing that big elephant in the room, affirmations. I know some of you are rolling your eyes already. Maybe you had a moment years ago, standing in front of your bathroom mirror, telling yourself, I am wealthy, I am abundant, money flows to me freely. And somewhere deep in your gut, a little voice said, no, you're not. Who are we kidding? And you felt worse after you did that affirmation than you did before you started. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. That experience isn't proof that affirmations don't work. It's proof that most people were never taught how to use them correctly. This isn't some new idea that popped up on social media. Psychologists have been studying affirmations for decades. And what they found is that when affirmations are personal, meaningful, and used correctly, they can help reduce stress, strengthen resilience, and support real behavioral change. If you've ever tried those generic affirmations floating around the internet, you probably know exactly what I mean. They feel awkward, almost embarrassing. You're repeating words that you would never naturally say, and sometimes words that you aren't even sure you understand. I am a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly. What does that even mean? Is there like a money river somewhere that I missed? And then there's the bigger problem. You don't believe it. So you're standing in front of your mirror, saying something that feels completely disconnected from your actual life experience. And your brain immediately pushes back. Researchers found that people with low self-esteem, generic positive statements actually make them feel worse. And honestly, that makes perfect sense when you understand how your brain works. Your brain's job is to keep track of what it believes is true. When you feed it a statement that feels wildly inconsistent with your day-to-day reality, it doesn't automatically accept it. It starts building a case against it. If you say, I'm great with money, your brain responds, really? What about that credit card debt? What about the fees that you had to pay because you missed your payment? What about that impulse purchase last week? So instead of creating confidence, you've accidentally triggered an internal debate designed to point out all your flaws, your mistakes, and your bad choices, which actually reinforces the exact opposite of your affirmation statement. So affirmations sound like a really bad idea, right? Not necessarily. What researchers found is that when affirmations are done correctly, something very different happens. Studies using brain imaging found that deeply meaningful self-affirmations that your brain actually believes can be true activate the brain's reward centers and parts of the prefrontal cortex involved in self-worth, positive valuation, and future-focused thinking. In other words, the goal isn't to convince yourself of something you know isn't true. The goal is to give your brain a believable bridge between where you are today and where you're trying to go. So the question isn't, do affirmations work? The question is, are you doing them in a way that your brain can actually receive the message? Here's the core issue. Most affirmations are written for a fictional version of you, the person you want to be, but you're not now. I am a millionaire. I am confident and powerful. I attract abundance. But those aren't actually affirmations. Those are aspirational fiction statements. And your brain, your beautifully sophisticated, protective, pattern-recognizing brain, immediately flags them as false. When there's a gap between what you're saying and what your nervous system knows to be true right now, your brain doesn't get rewired, it gets defensive. Now, the research backs this up. The affirmations that create the biggest impact aren't those generic ones. They're the ones that connect to something you genuinely care about and can actually see happening in your life. The more personal and meaningful the statement is, the more likely your brain is to engage with it. Otherwise, you're just repeating words without giving your brain anything to grab onto. If you deeply connect to the affirmation, and if your brain believes it in the possibility of it happening one day, into the future, then your affirmation statement will actually work. So here's what I want you to try instead. And I call this the bridge affirmation because it builds a bridge between where you are right now and where you're actually hoping to go. And crucially, it's a bridge that your brain can believe. So the formula is simple. There's 3 parts. Part 1, acknowledge your current truth and honor your past. Not the worst version, not focusing on the negative, just being honest. Right now, money feels tight. Or right now, I don't feel fully confident managing my money. Or I've made some money mistakes. Or I know I am just getting started. Part 2, focus on who you're becoming, not who you're pretending to already be, and then connect that identity to a meaningful, deeply personal goal. Be specific, be personal, make it mean something. Not I am wealthy. Instead, I am becoming someone who makes thoughtful financial decisions, manages money with confidence, or someone who is creating the life I truly want. And that life is different for everybody. Maybe it's paying off your mortgage. Maybe it's taking that month-long trip to Italy you always dreamed about. Maybe it's buying a retirement home near the ocean, helping your kids graduate debt-free. Or maybe it's finally having enough financial security that you can sleep well at night. Whatever it is, make it yours. Do you see the difference? The first statement asks your brain to accept something it may not believe. The second gives your brain a direction. It reinforces an identity, someone who is capable, someone who is learning, someone who is taking control of their financial life. And it connects that identity to a future that feels meaningful to you and worth pursuing. That is something your brain can work with. That's something your reward system can get excited about. Part 3, claim evidence of progress. So this is where you anchor to something real, something you've already done, already proven, already accomplished towards your bigger financial goal. This is evidence to your brain that you are on a journey to a life that is actually possible. For example, I've already shown myself that I can do this because I, fill in the blank, paid off one debt, started a budget, signed up for this class. The progress doesn't need to be a big deal. It can be admitting you need to change, beginning to research something online, talking to your family or friends, letting them know that you are ready to change. Now, again, look at these 2, and I'm pretty sure you will see the difference immediately. Here's affirmation 1. I am wealthy, and money flows to me. Affirmation 2. Right now, money feels tight, but I am becoming someone who manages money with confidence, and I am on the path to buying my dream home on the beach for my retirement. And I've already shown that I can do this because I've signed up for this free Learn How to Budget class, and I am committed to change. See the difference? Here's why this matters. For your money life specifically. One of the single biggest barriers to financial freedom is not knowledge. It's identity. It's the story you're telling yourself about what's possible for you. When you do a bridge affirmation correctly, you start to close the gap between your current identity and the identity of someone who builds wealth. You start to shift the default programs running in the background, and that changes decisions. Tiny decisions, daily decisions, what you spend, what you save, what opportunities you notice, what risks you're willing to take. The brain you bring to your finances every day is shaped by the stories you're telling yourself every morning with your affirmation practice. So what does this look like in practice? To make this really easy for you, I have an online tool that you can use for free called the Bridge to Becoming tool. And it guides you through a bridge affirmation process, as well as a few other amazing, helpful practices. Click the link in the description to get started with it. All right. But if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, grab some paper, write 1 to 2 bridge affirmation statements that connect to your actual goals. Say them out loud, not mumbled. Feel them. Emotion is key here. It activates those neural pathways. Pair them with a visual if you can. Research shows that combining affirmations with mental imagery strengthens that neural imprint. Take 2 minutes, that's it. This simple process orients your brain, keeps you focused on what matters most to you, reinforces you as the person in charge of your own life, and gets you motivated for the day ahead. How incredible that one sentence and 2 minutes can do that for you. All right, now let's talk about throughout the day, some calming practices. You've started your morning with attention. Now the day happens. Because here's the reality. You can do all the right things in the morning, and then by 10:47 a.m., someone sends you a passive-aggressive email. Your phone blows up with a notification, and suddenly everything that you set up in that 2-minute morning ritual feels very far away. This is where your midday or throughout the day calming practice comes in. This one is rooted in some of the most solid neuroscience that we have. Let's look at what's happening in your brain when you're stressed out. Okay, geek out with me for a minute. Some brain stuff. The autonomic nervous system is your body's automatic control system, constantly working behind the scenes to regulate essential functions and keep you safe. Keeps you balanced, it keeps you alive. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 modes. You've probably heard of them: sympathetic, fight, flight, or freeze, and parasympathetic, rest, digest, recover. If you want to think clearly, you need to be in that parasympathetic mode. The problem is that modern life keeps many of us stuck in a low-level stress response almost all the time. The constant notifications, the work deadlines, the financial pressure, the endless news cycle, social comparison, all keep signaling to our brain that something needs our attention. And as a result, many of us spend far more time in an emotional, reactive state than we realize, which makes it much harder to access the thoughtful, rational part of the brain we need for good decision making. Weirdly, your brain does not do a great job distinguishing between a threat to your physical survival and a threat to your emotional well-being. The stress response fires the exact same way. To your nervous system, being chased by a bear and feeling intense fear when you open a credit card statement can trigger many of the same stress response mechanisms within your body. So how does the brain decide what is a threat and what isn't? What situations earn a parasympathetic nervous system response or a flight, fight, or freeze response? Well, your brain learned them, which is good news because, as we know, anything learned can be unlearned. Over time, your brain builds associations. If money was connected to stress, fear, conflict, shame, or uncertainty at some point in your life, your brain stores those experiences as important information. This usually happens when we're children. Then years later, when a similar situation arises, those old patterns can get activated automatically. The amygdala, the emotional center of the brain, quickly jumps in and takes control before your thinking brain has a chance to weigh in. Your body shifts into a sympathetic nervous system response. Your focus narrows. The part of your brain responsible for planning, problem solving, and long-term thinking becomes much less accessible or entirely offline. And when you're running in chronic sympathetic overdrive, your cortisol is elevated, decision-making degrades, creativity drops, willpower depletes. You are not in the state that encourages financial freedom. You're, fear-based decision-making state. And that's why so many smart, successful people make bad financial decisions over and over again. It's why people know exactly what they should do with their money, but they still struggle to do it. In that moment, the brain isn't focused on building wealth. It's focused on staying safe. Here's the beautiful part, though. You have a direct line to your nervous system, and it runs through your breath. I want to introduce you to something called the vagus nerve. This is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It runs from your brainstem all the way down to your colon, touching your heart, your lungs, your digestive system along the way. It is the main driver of the parasympathetic nervous system. And here's something incredibly remarkable. You can stimulate it deliberately. Research shows that slow diaphragmatic breathing, specifically at around 5 to 6 breaths per minute, directly activates the vagus nerve, which releases acetylcholine, the body's calming neurotransmitter. The reason this works isn't because breathing is magical. It works because breathing is one of the few things that we can consciously control that has a direct line into our nervous system. This isn't a mindset trick. I don't believe in them. It's biology. Researchers can actually measure the changes happening in the body when people practice these breathing techniques consistently. Diaphragmatic breathing is simply slow, deep breathing that comes from your belly. And you inhale, your diaphragm, a large muscle underneath your lungs, moves downward, causing your belly to expand. When you exhale, your belly gently falls back in. A simple way to tell if you're doing it is put one hand on your chest and one on your stomach. And as you breathe in, the hand on your stomach should move more than the hand on your chest. As you breathe out, your stomach should gently fall. One study in Frontiers in Psychology publication found that diaphragmatic breathing reduced stress, improved mood, and enhanced attention and cognitive performance, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. It's hard to make good decisions when your brain is convinced you're under attack. Calm that nervous system first, and the thinking brain gets a chance to come back online. You don't need a 20-minute meditation in a controlled, quiet environment in order to calm your nervous system. Thank God, because who has that during the workday? You need micro practices. Small, accessible, deployable anywhere. Now, there are several strategies you can use, some focused on breath, some not, and they work in just a few minutes. Pick the ones that resonate with you. Number 1, diaphragmatic breathing, which is our foundation. Slow your breath down. Breathe into your belly, not your chest. Exhale longer than you inhale. Research shows that extending the exhale specifically activates that parasympathetic response. Try a 4-count inhale, 6-count exhale, do it for 5 to 10 breaths. That's 60 to 90 seconds, and you shifted your nervous system state. Number 2, box breathing for acute stress. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out, hold for 4, repeat. This is what the Navy SEALs use in high-stakes situations, and it works by forcing a rhythmic pattern that engages your prefrontal cortex and dials down the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. The prefrontal cortex is where your best thinking, your financial planning, your long-term decision-making lives, and you want it online. Number 3, physiological sigh, a quick reset. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman popularized this one. Double inhale through the nose, sniff in, then sniff once more, then one long, slow exhale through the mouth. This deflates the air sacs in your lungs and is the fastest known way to reduce physiological stress in real time. Takes about 10 seconds. Number 4, grounding. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, sensory reset. If you're spinning out, anxious, overwhelmed, scattered, then this is powerful. Name 5 things you can see, 4 you can hear, 3 you can physically feel, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste. This technique works by forcing your brain to shift from the internal threat narrative that it's running to the present moment sensory input around you. You literally cannot be fully activated in fight or flight mode while you're consciously noticing your environment. Number 5, calming touch. Place your hand on your chest and breathe. Sounds simple, but self-touch with intention activates the same oxytocin pathways as being comforted by another person. Research shows that physical self-soothing genuinely downregulates your stress. And some people find this easier to do than breath focus, especially early on in your practice. Number 6, cold water, quick and powerful. Splash cold water on your face or run it over your wrists. This activates something called the dive reflex, which immediately slows your heart rate. It's fast, free, and it works. Number 7, 2-minute walk outside. Sunlight and movement both have measurable effects on cortisol regulation and dopamine release. Even a 2-minute break outside can shift your state enough to come back to your work with a different brain. These are 7 strategies you can try out to see which works best for you. And I want to be explicit about why this connects to your money. One of the biggest obstacles to financial success that people struggle with, but almost nobody talks about, is chronic stress. When your nervous system is constantly under pressure, your brain naturally shifts its focus towards immediate relief instead of long-term rewards. That's how your brain is designed to work. It's why stress can lead to impulse spending. It's why people avoid opening bills or checking their account balances when they're feeling overwhelmed. And it's why creating a budget, building a financial plan, or making thoughtful decisions can feel almost impossible when you're mentally and emotionally exhausted. Think about how you act when you're exhausted and overstimulated. Not exactly the state when you make your best decisions. Usually that's when you do and say things that you regret. A stressed brain is focused on getting through the present moment, through today. A regulated brain can focus on building tomorrow. And the person who builds financial freedom is not the version of you that's running on stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. It's the regulated version of you, the grounded version, the one who can sit with a spreadsheet, make a long-term plan, delay gratification, and execute on that plan with calm intention. These practices just aren't about only self-care or feeling better. They're about functioning better, about creating the conditions your brain needs to perform at its best. So what does this look like in practice? Set 1 or 2 intentional reset points in your day, mid-morning, after lunch, whatever. And then on top of that, when a stressful moment hits, before you respond to an email or make a financial decision, do one of these practices. Even 60 seconds changes your state. You don't need more time. You just need a go-to habit that works. All right, we've arrived at the end of the day, and I want to talk about gratitude because gratitude practices are everywhere. And I truly believe that most people who try them are doing them in a way that leaves most of the benefit on the table. Now, the standard advice is simple. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. And look, that's not wrong, but here's what they're not telling you. And this truly matters. The neuroscience of gratitude is genuinely stunning. When you practice gratitude, your brain activates so many different parts. Regions that are tied to higher order thinking, decision-making, emotional awareness, motivation, and empathy. Gratitude also activates the limbic system, triggering the release of serotonin and dopamine, which are the brain's feel-good and reward neurotransmitters. Stanford neuroscientist Andrew Huberman has described gratitude as not just a feeling, but a measurable neural event. And here's the long game benefit. Gratitude promotes neuroplasticity, or the ability for your brain to learn and grow to form better habits. Regularly practicing gratitude literally trains your brain to scan for positive experiences, building new neural pathways that make it easier and easier over time to notice what's good. Researchers have found that people who regularly practice gratitude seem to develop stronger emotional regulation skills over time. In other words, they become better at managing stress, recovering from setbacks, and keeping challenges in perspective. One study found that participants who practiced gratitude journaling were measurably happier and emotionally stronger. Another showed that gratitude reduces activity in the amygdala, lowering baseline anxiety. But here is the critical finding from researchers like Yale professor Laurie Santos and Mel Robbins. Being specific is everything. Saying I'm grateful for my family engages your brain very differently than saying I'm grateful that my daughter sent me a text today just to check in on me. The more specific and emotionally vivid, the more it engages the emotional centers of the brain and creates lasting neural change. Generic gratitude is like generic affirmations. It just skims the surface. Specific, emotionally anchored gratitude changes your brain. For gratitude to work its best, you need to tap into that emotional connection once again and make it as detailed as possible. But then you need one more thing. You need to recognize and acknowledge your role in creating that environment for that thing that you're thankful for to have occurred. So let's talk more about that by reviewing our radical gratitude method. Here's what I want you to add to being specific. And this is the part that most people completely miss. I call it radical gratitude because it does something that regular gratitude practice doesn't. It builds your sense of agency, of control, of responsibility. It empowers you to make the conditions for the things that you are grateful for to flourish. The standard gratitude practice asks, what am I grateful for? Radical gratitude asks 2 more questions. 1, what specifically happened, and what did I do that allowed it to happen? Let me give you an example. Standard gratitude. I'm grateful that I closed a new client today at work. Radical gratitude. I'm grateful I closed a new client today. What happened? I followed up when I didn't feel like it. I asked one good question that opened up the conversation. And I stayed calm even when the negotiation got uncomfortable. I did that. Those were my choices. See what's happening there? You're not just logging a good thing. You're giving yourself credit. You're building a body of evidence, daily evidence that you are a capable, effective person who creates outcomes through their choices and actions. This is directly tied to something psychologists call an internal locus of control. The belief that your outcomes are the result of your own actions rather than luck, circumstance, or forces outside of you. Research consistently shows that people with stronger internal locus of control are better at financial planning, more likely to build wealth, and more resilient when things go wrong. When you do radical gratitude every night, you are literally building your internal locus of control. You are training your brain to see the connection between your choices and your outcomes. You are becoming someone who believes at a cellular level that they have power over their financial life. That is not small. That is everything. The reverse is also true. Without this practice, it's easy to log all the good things that happen to you as luck, as external, as things that happened to you. And that keeps you passive. That keeps financial freedom something that happens to other people and not to you. So here are a few more tips for your night practice. Write it, don't just think it. The act of physically writing engages the brain differently than mental rehearsal. It deepens the process. Do it right before sleep. Sleep is when your brain consolidates memories and learning. Ending on this note on evidence of your own effectiveness is the last thing your brain processes before it files the day away. 3 is enough. You don't need a list of 10 gratitudes every single day. 3 specific, emotionally felt, agency-acknowledging gratitudes. That's your target. If it was a hard day, still look. Mel Robbins makes the point that genuine gratitude, the kind that changes your brain, doesn't bypass the hard stuff. You can acknowledge that the day was hard, it was difficult. and still find the moment where you showed up anyway. That might be the most important thing to write down. So what does this look like in practice? Take 5 minutes before bed with a journal or even your phone. Write 3 radical gratitudes. What happened? What I did? What that tells me about myself. Let yourself feel it. Give yourself credit. Don't rush through. The emotion is the neural event. All right, let me land this plane. We've talked about 3 routines today. None of them are new. You've heard about affirmations, you've heard about breath work, and you've heard about gratitude. And I want to come back to where we started. You've been told to do the right things, but you've been told to do them the wrong way. Here's what changes when you do them the right way. In the morning, instead of repeating hollow phrases that make your brain argue with itself, you build a bridge affirmation that your nervous system can receive, one that acknowledges where you are, claims evidence of your movement in life, and orients yourself toward where you're going. Don't forget to download our Bridge to Becoming tool for help with that. Throughout the day, instead of white-knuckling through stress and making reactive decisions from our fried nervous system, you use micro-calming practices to keep your vagus nerve activated and your prefrontal cortex online, because that is the brain that builds financial freedom. And at night, instead of passively listing nice things that happened around you, you practice radical gratitude, specific, emotionally vivid, and agency building. So you go to sleep with a growing body of evidence that you are someone who creates their own outcomes. Together, these 3 practices, morning, midday, night, are doing something profound. They are reshaping your identity. They are building the kind of brain that makes better decisions, takes better actions, builds better habits, and over time creates financial freedom. Not because you manifested it, because you built it. One day, one routine, one neural pathway at a time. Okay, here's your homework. Start with 1. Don't try to implement all 3 at once. That's a setup for burnout. Pick the one that resonated the most with you today. Morning bridge affirmation, midday nervous system reset, night radical gratitude. Just 1. And do it for 7 days. See what shifts. If this episode was useful to you, I would love for you to share it with one person who needs to hear it. Don't blast it to your whole network. Just one person that you thought of while you were listening. And leave us a review if you haven't already. It takes just 2 minutes and it genuinely helps the show reach more people. I'll be back next week. Until then, take care of your brain. It's taking care of everything else. And as always, until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building the life you actually want.